Alrighty, here we go. I think we are set up and live for today's live stream. So, basically, what's going to happen here is we're just going to be chilling out, having some, relaxed time here before the Sunday afternoon games get kicked off. I'll be on for about the next hour or so, just answering all of your guys' questions. So please start dropping those in the live chat, and I'll get you guys hooked up with all the advice and information you need for this week's games. Like I said, we're just hanging out here, so I'm down to talk anything football. If you want me to pick games for you this week, I've actually just got my sports book pulled up. I'm going to, sign out here about 30 minutes early so I can get some action on those last-minute lines. But, of course, what's up, the NFL kid? Meet the Woo's got some questions for us here. Drop those questions, of course, in the live chat, like I said, and we'll get that stuff heading out your way. So, of course, we do have some big news here as we get started with Sunday afternoon. We've got a lot of inactives and actually some big names here. It seemed like we avoided some issue-causing injuries last week, but the deeper and deeper we've gotten into the week here, we've had some injuries occur. Once again, I've got struck with some bad luck here in my must-start list for the week. We have, of course, Julio Jones inactive, unfortunately, for those of you guys that were looking to start him, so make sure to pull him from your lineups if you ended up making that decision. He had, what was it, a rib injury that he is inactive with, a knee injury. I read ribs with someone else there. And then Alvin Kamara, also obviously a much bigger deal, is also inactive for today, which absolutely freaking blows. AK had a pretty down week last week. That was disappointing, and of course, now we're not going to get him for this big Tampa Bay matchup, but you've kind of got that equalizer on the other side with Julio Jones being out, so I can't wait to watch that Saints game. That's going to be super fun. Of course, that makes Russell Gage a more interesting and viable flex option for the week, especially in PPR formats. They're really going to need to get the ball out of Tom Brady's hands quickly because that Saints pass rush is going to be coming after him, and if you've watched some of the Saints versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers games in the past, the reason why the Saints are able to disrupt Tom Brady and absolutely give him a run for his money is because he's had some bad injury luck with his offensive playmakers. He's had games where Mike Evans is dinged up. Obviously, Chris Godwin tore his ACL in that matchup last year, so a ton of stuff goes into that, and then you get these uber-aggressive Saints cornerbacks that jam the hell out of the Tampa Bay wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, and then that throws up the timing, and it disrupts TB12's rhythm, and that's when you start to get some of those issues in the pocket, and then Tom gets sacked, and interceptions happen, and all kinds of bad stuff. So I'm really interested to watch the dynamic of that. Thank you guys for dropping your questions. I will get to them in just a second here. We're talking through some of the inactives for today. Of course, one more time, Alvin Kamara is out. Next man up is Mark Ingram. Not sure I love him in that matchup against a tough Buccaneers front seven, but might be a necessity for some of your teams here, of course. If you're enjoying the stream and you're just getting around here, make sure to smash the like button, help other people out there find the stream so I can help them out with their questions. And let's dive into stuff here. I've got my phone pulled up with Twitter. If we've got more live breaking news on injury updates, remember Michael Pittman out this week as well. My little sneaky ad for deep flex leagues here is to add Ashton Doolin, who actually saw a higher target share than Paris Campbell in week one. So meet the Woo. Starting out with questions here. Needs some help with his starting lineup. He has Nyheim Hines, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Ramondre Stevenson in a full PPR format. Looks like we're a little bit light in loafers here at the running back position, but of course it's week 2, so that's already an issue that we are experiencing here. I am very high on Ramondre Stevenson for the long term of the season. I think he can make some damage there in that Pats backfield and ultimately open up some more of the opportunity share there. But this week, I think I'm going to have to bounce Jeff Wilson Jr.'s direction. Not super high on him here, but it does sound like we're going to get another poor weather game here for the 49ers. Poor Trey Lance just can't freaking catch a break. He has been very, very unlucky in terms of what obviously just the weather conditions for the game. He played in the monsoon last week at Chicago, and I just looked before I went live here. It looks like a 50% chance of rain at Levi Stadium, so that's not ideal for him either. So I will go Jeff Wilson Jr., expect another heavy rushing attack. Hopefully Seattle's defensive front, if Jeff Wilson gets those super valuable goal line carries, isn't out there punching the ball out and stripping the football away from him. That sucked to see last week if you were a Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon owner who had a really nice matchup, but just couldn't convert and cash in that red area. Meet the Woo's also got another question here. Going to start making our way through because the questions are coming in at a higher and higher rate. Thank you guys, of course. All those are welcome. We're going to get to every single one of you guys here in the next hour and make sure all those questions get answered. Russell Gage. Oh, yes. Okay, so this is not really a question. He's just commenting here, Russell Gage looks like a better starting option with both Julio and Godwin out this week. I couldn't agree more. If you're playing in a full PPR format, I expect a nice volume of attempts to go his direction underneath, like I talked about in last week's matchup. With the Dallas Cowboys defensive front and their ability to rush the passer, my expectation was that TB12 was going to have to get that ball out quick. He wasn't going to be able to sit back there in the pocket and let that interior and exterior rush get to him and disrupt his throwing pattern. So I said Chris Godwin, they're going to get him the ball quick off the line of scrimmage, and until he got hurt, which was very early in that contest, that's what they were doing. They got him the football, I believe, on the first passing snap of the game and really tried to incorporate him to the things there. That's what I expect this week from Tampa's offense as well. This Saints secondary, again, plays very physical, and they're going to jam wide receivers. They're going to press them, and they're going to try and throw off their rhythm. So I expect a lot of quick hitters. Mike Evans isn't really much so that player. He's more of your go up and grab it, a possession receiver, a red zone option. So I really like that Russell Gage opportunity in that area. Again, what's up to the NFL kid? I remember you've been hanging out here for about a year or so, maybe even more on the channel. Meet the Woo Wonders, Bucs or Saints. We've been talking a lot of Saints here, obviously, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers with that situation. If I had to pick one and go with my gut here, no Alvin Kamara makes me lean the direction of the Saints. But like I said, the Bucs kind of, excuse me. Totally said that wrong. No Alvin Kamara makes me lean towards the Bucs, but then they had the equalizer of now you've got no Julio Jones. So is Julio necessarily as important to the Bucs offense at this point as Alvin Kamara is? Probably not, but it leans into the issues we've seen Tampa have in the past. So I think I might take the Saints in this game. I don't think they were going to be able to run the ball particularly well with or without Alvin, so I might just go the Saints here to pick an upset. My roommate is actually a Saints fan, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that matchup. I just saw a question here. I lost it from Colton. That's actually my roommate. So for those of you guys that are wondering, a little bit of a silly question here. But he says, can we consider Michael Thomas a top wide receiver again? I'm going to pause. I'm going to wait on that for a second. I do think that you're getting into a territory here where he has the potential to be a low-end wide receiver one in fantasy. However, I do not consider him to be with the class of your Devontae Adams, your Jamar Chases of the world, your Justin Jeffersons. Those guys are on a different level right now. Excuse me. While Michael Thomas is still a great possession wide receiver, while he can still see a high volume of passes, you've got a guy who had one really nice game. I apologize. I need some water here or something. I should have brought a glass to drink in with me. But essentially here, he looks like he's going to be a nice PPR option. I am very optimistic and hopeful for what he can be this season, but I'd prefer to have him, of course, as a wide receiver too or something. We've got James Stark in here just saying, how are you doing? I hope I have a good day. Thank you. You, of course, as well. Hoping all of you guys can catch some dubs in your fantasy lineups and leagues this week. Paul's got a question here. He's got A.J. Dillon, Darrell Henderson, and Melvin Gordon. He is looking for a flex in his full PPR format this week. I have to say I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon here. Last week, he completely blew me away. Looked really nice in terms of what he was able to do with Aaron Jones on the field, having a 10% higher snap share. So you've got a guy in A.J. Dillon that got the 2 goal line carries. It was 3 red zone touches for A.J. Dillon to 2 red zone touches for Aaron Jones. 0 goal line carries for Aaron Jones. And we saw A.J. Dillon have 2 opportunities in that extremely valuable area. So really good stuff there. Excited to see that. So I'll be bouncing that direction again this week. Hopefully A.J. Dillon will run some more routes out of the backfield and do some really nice stuff there. So Feathen has a question here. Who should we start, Elijah Moore or Curtis Samuel? I've got Elijah Moore on the must-start list this week. This kind of plays into similar philosophies and thought processes that I've had about other games this week. The Jets are at a severe talent deficit against the Cleveland Browns front 7 this week. They're one of those matchups where I'm expecting a necessity to get the football out of their hands early here and really start to get that ball moving. I think that having a slot role here for Elijah Moore is very valuable, and I'll head that direction for him here this week. I really like Curtis Samuel, and he's someone that's growing on me here. I've got him as a nice flex option in 12-team or more formats. But I'm going to wait another week here. I did think that he was the priority add over Jahan Dotson last week, despite the fact that Jahan is someone who is an absolutely dominant. If you watch his college tape, I actually saw him in person last year. Vertically, he is very, very hard to run with and someone that's almost impossible to guard on field stretching plays. But in terms of the volume differential last week, Curtis Samuel showed me that, Carson Wentz really depends upon him as a safety blanket and looks to him as an underneath option. So again, really liking Curtis Samuel's outlook going forward here if he continues to be used in that high volume fashion and potentially be the target share leader for this team. Again, I don't think he's the best wide receiver in this offense. I do think he is the third most talented wide receiver, but his role to the offense is very, very valuable. Think of it somewhat similarly to the way that we kind of talked about Hunter Renfrow last year, knowing, full and well that he's not Cooper Kupp, he's not, an NFL X wide receiver one type player, but just that slot role, the safety blanket and the volume receiver opportunity for that team was so integral to that team. I got to get moving a bit faster here. We've got questions flying in here much faster than I am giving analysis. Who will be the man that blows up for Tampa Bay? James Stark asks for this week. I think Tampa might struggle, to be completely honest. I think offensively they're going to run into the same bad luck issues. We've talked through this a couple times already on stream, so I'll move quickly through this. But I think Russell Gage is kind of the next man that steps up for this offense today. Swift is supposed to play, but he has an ankle issue. Thoughts on playing him today or too risky from Rick? I'm still rolling, DeAndre Swift out in my lineups this week. He said to reporters earlier on, nothing to worry about. Sometimes that's just BS from players who don't want to get caught up in the media conversation and don't want to obviously cause a ruckus, but I'm trusting DeAndre Swift this week. I'm going to roll with him in lineups. Definitely one of my favorite players this offseason. I said he had top 5 running back potential. Super high on him still here, of course, in PPR formats. I think that his role played out perfectly last week. We saw receiving game involvement. We saw him be extremely efficient on the ground. And we, of course, saw him score a rushing touchdown as well. So I'll roll with him here. It's not a situation for me where I feel like there's another option on your fantasy roster that's a more advantageous play. So that's why I'm going to defer into the option of playing that risk, rolling the injury into my lineup here and hoping that he continues to play at a high level. We saw this kind of happen last year too, and this is why I really advocated for Swift owners, especially Delvin Cook being another one of these players. If you're going to draft them and invest a high level of draft capital into this player on your team, we know that they come with some level of assessed injury risk. That's why handcuffing in Alexander Madison, Jamal Williams was probably a smart play, because we knew that these guys are going to get tagged. They're going to come into matchups with that questionable designation. And that's just something that we're going to have to deal with this season, and it's something that's going to be a reality of our situations here. So Wayne's got a question, Hunt or Jerry Judy in full PPR? This is a really interesting play for me, because usually you'd be able to differentiate kind of a riskier play versus, a safer floor play. And typically that safer play ends up being the running back, especially a guy in Kareem Hunt who's catching passes out of the backfield. But of course, he's not the team's official designated starter. Now, I do have Kareem Hunt as a must-start player this week. I do actually still think that he is the slightly safer option, because I think that we're still evaluating and really breaking down how that wide receiver core for the Broncos offense is going to break out here. You had 7 targets apiece for both Judy and Sutton week 1, and you also had a situation where both of them caught 4 passes. Now, Jerry Judy scored a 67-yard touchdown. Pretty much all of it was a jump ball situation where he got his mitts up there and made a hell of a catch, and then he had a phenomenal run after catch and basically outran the safety for a score. So I think he looked like the better player in that matchup. I think he appeared to be the better wide receiver in that room. I've talked about this at length all offseason. I am crazily high and bullish on Jerry Judy for this season in best ball formats, which I've done probably a good 40-45 best ball drafts this summer. I had a 47% exposure rate to Jerry Judy, so I've got a ton of shares of him on my team, but still that uncertainty looms a little bit. You've also got the situation where the Broncos could blow out the Texans this week. I actually just had the sportsbook lines pulled up on my phone. I can take a peek at that for you really quick, but the main message here is I believe they were 10 or 10.5 point favorites, so if this game gets out of hand, if Denver bounces back, you might get a whole quarter and a half, maybe, halfway through the third quarter, the team establishes such a lead on this Texans team, which, yes, was a little frisky and feisty last week and tied the Colts, but still, you do have that talent deficit. It was a division game, so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt here. I might swing Kareem Hunt in this matchup again. Had him as a must-start player for this week. Was phenomenal. He's getting the valuable touches in that offense. A guy who had 2 total scores, a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. It, of course, is the much preferred option in the passing game over a Nick Chubb. So Perry's got a question here. I apologize. I said I was going to move quicker. Of course, you can never trust me when I say that, because I like to give you guys thorough and in-depth responses. So Perry had a question. Of course, I then lost the question. Here it is. In a running back to start situation, Ramondre Stevenson or Jamal Williams, since J.K. Dobbins is out. This is an interesting one here because you've got two players that aren't the official starter for their teams, and you've also got a situation where both of these players have some goal line utility. They both have some standalone versatility for their offenses, and you don't exactly know where those goal line touches might bounce. So it might be an interesting start here to have Jamal in the lineup with that questionable designation to a DeAndre Swift. However, the Pats offense also has a situation where you're expecting them to be very dependent on the run game, with Mac Jones coming into this matchup a little bit banged up. If you're playing in a full PPR format, I might recommend to swing the direction of Jamal Williams. I will say both of these are very risky start scenarios. Of course, you're in a bit of a pinch here because J.K. Dobbins is out and you don't really have a choice to go elsewhere. But of course, if you are playing in that PPR format, what we saw happen last week was that Ty Montgomery, who now landed on the IR, was seeing a lot of those pass game involvement opportunities. So you've also got a guy in Pierre Strong that could come in and soak up some of that work here in week 2. I might stay away from Stevenson this week. I might head Jamal Williams' way. Hope that he gets one of the shares of the goal line work, and of course see some pass game work as well, which is something that he is capable of doing. So John's got a question here, ugly, but he's got a situation. Those are his words, not mine. He has a half PPR format. His tight end situation is Kyle Granson, Evan Ingram, or Cole Kmet. So Cole Kmet's playing the Packers on Sunday Night Football tonight. The Jacksonville Jaguars are playing the Colts. If we remember back to last week, the Texans had 2 receiving touchdowns allowed to O.J. Howard. The Colts had allowed 2 receiving touchdowns to O.J. Howard. So if you think about it from that lens of things, that makes Evan Ingram seem like an attractive option here. Of course, you've got Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be throwing that football downfield this week. So I might head that way. I know a lot of people are high on Cole Kmet this year, but I need to see it first. That's something that I want to see factored into the offense at a high level. It's really hard for me to get a read on the Bears or 49ers offense right now, just after watching last week. There's really not too much you can take from that. You can't assess that at too high of a level or put too much of an onus on what happened in that game because those circumstances were so abnormal and so unique. So I think I'll head Evan Ingram's direction for this matchup. I do think Cole Kmet does have some nice intriguing upside this year, but that is the option for coming up here. So we've got some people saying thank you for the responses. Of course, that's what we're here for. Make sure if you're sticking around here, hit that like button. If you are just joining the stream, let me know your questions. I'm answering everything. Let it fly. NFL questions. You want me to pick games, fantasy football analysis, whatever the case might be. And of course, if you're just finding SFS for the first time here, hit that subscribe button. We're happy to have you. And of course, are looking to be an interactive tool for you this season. Will's got a question here. Full PPR. You've got a flex scenario with Jeff Wilson, Mark Ingram, or Kenyon Drake. So this is really interesting because you've got J.K. Dobbins out for the Baltimore Ravens. That's where Kenyon Drake comes into play here. Alvin Kamara not playing this week for the Saints. That's where Mark Ingram comes into play. And then Jeff Wilson with Elijah Mitchell out. So you've got 3 reserve running backs all in this situation here. And I apologize for those of you guys that are SFS Gold and All Access Pass members. I wasn't able to update my rankings, of course, after the fact that Alvin Kamara was ruled out. So obviously that news just coming out a few minutes ago. And we're live now, so I won't be able to do that. But if you're watching here, please, I hope to God you guys have Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport on Twitter or something, or just check your lineups before the game to make sure that you've got Kamara out of there. But besides the fact here, I would go Jeff Wilson in this scenario. I'm not feeling too confident or strongly on Mark Ingram in this Tampa Bay matchup. I think that the Saints are going to have to put the ball in Jameis's hands every once in a while and force him to make big plays. That ultimately could be the difference in this game if Jameis isn't able to do that. But I think that just from a safety perspective here, Mark Ingram is going to be incredibly touchdown dependent this week. The 49ers, the Buccaneers defensive run stopping front looked fantastic last week, despite the fact that Zeke had a pretty efficient game and they controlled the game script for the majority of that contest. They were moving around the field quickly. I think they were more wrapped up on just stopping Dak from checking down the football, which was really their game plan. They talked about that after the fact. They were just kind of sitting and squatting like we saw the LA Chargers do on Thursday night this week against Kansas City. It worked for 3/4 of that game until Ultimately, we saw the Chiefs start to get loose and throw some passes downfield, and then Herbert had the pick six. But bouncing back to Jeff Wilson and actually the meat and potatoes of the question here, I just think that you've got a better situation in what expects to be a poor weather situation with a 50% chance of rain at Levi Stadium. I think they're going to run the ball a lot again this week. Hopefully, Jeff Wilson can be more efficient than he was last week. He only had 9 carries for 22 yards in relief of Mitchell. So not even 3 yards a carry, not even 2.5 yards per carry. Pretty ugly stuff there, but that was the reality of the situation. We're going to be live for about 45 more minutes here, getting you guys set up for your week 2 games, of course. Drop those comments and questions here in the live chat. Click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Leave a like if you guys are enjoying today's stream. Next question up here from Ashwin. We've had a half PPR league with Darrell Henderson, DeAndre Swift, and Cordero Patterson for their running back positions. He's asking, should he sub in Naji Harris for one of them? Now, this is one where it seems really unflattering and just not exciting to put Naji Harris in your lineup after last week. I get it. It was really frustrating, and we had this kind of emotional roller coaster of events occur as it regards to his health. You had a situation where you've got in the preseason this Liz Frank sprain, which for me personally, I stopped drafting Naji Harris after I heard that. That is very scary to hear because a Liz Frank injury can cause a season-ending issue. Look at Travis Etienne a season ago. Those are problematic. And so that was an immediate red flag for me. And then you've got him saying everything's fine, we're all right. And then he doesn't come out for overtime last week to play that kind of fifth quarter for the Bengals game. And that, of course, was very troubling as well. We heard some rumors of a high ankle sprain, could be out like 4 weeks. Then those quickly disappeared. And then as the week progressed, everything seems fine now. So it's really uncertain what's going to happen here with Naji. But I have to believe that if he's out there and playing, which I assume he is, I haven't seen any new tweets or any new information from, obviously, any of the guys at ESPN, that being Adam Schefter or what is Ian Rappaport, NFL Network. So I'm assuming he's fine. I'm going to check in on his status here right now. But I almost feel like if he's playing, you kind of have to start him. It's a tough matchup. I think that the Patriots are going to do their best to stop the run and make Mitch Trubisky stop them. But if he's truly healthy, if he's truly getting the opportunity and volume that we expect Naji Harris to get, even if it's 80 to 85% of that, that still, in my opinion, seems like a fringe RB1 level player. And that's what we ranked him as this week. I was very conservative on my, obviously, assessment of him for this week's games. But I feel like it is a situation where you have to put him out there. If I was going to pull one of your running backs, I would pull Darrell Henderson. Also a running back that has some question marks with the situation. The Falcons looked very good on paper last week against the Saints run offense. They didn't really put up too much in terms of that category. Alvin Kamara had a very quiet game. Of course, again, he is out. Please make sure he's out of your lineups for this week. But Henderson, of course, the Rams' offensive rushing attack looked terrible last week. Like I said, the Falcons had a pretty good game. It was a division game. I always take those and put them in kind of their own separate category because sometimes we see the outcomes of in-division play end up a little bit differently from what we see them against regular play. So, again, though, I would just bite the bullet here. You know, take your medicine, start Naji Harris. It's going to suck, but let me check in on him one more time since we've been live. I haven't seen any new information or news about him, so just want to make sure that we didn't get any more, obviously, negative info about his status for this week's games. Once I do this really quick, I will jump into the next question, but like I said, I want to give you guys, obviously, the best information that you can have access to. I will bounce to the next question here before I find out that information. So, Baby Santa here, interesting name, says that he's sad that he has to ask this, or they have to ask this, but they have Zach Ertz, Devin Singletary, Rex Burkhead, and their QB is Kyler Murray. He's got 3 options for the flex. Who am I starting this week? So immediately off the bat here, I had Devin Singletary as a must-sit player for this week. The eye test, he looked very, very good in last week's games. I was very impressed with what I saw from Devin Singletary, but the reality of the situation, what I talked about in that video, is that he is in a committee with 3 other players, and you might be thinking to yourself, 3? There's only 2 other running backs. You've got yourself Zach Moss, and you've got yourself a James Cook, who had a 5% snap share in week 1. Who is this third player? And I talked about how this third player has a 100% snap share and takes away the most valuable touches from those running backs. And his name is Josh Allen, taking the goal line work, running literally QB power read. The Bills play a physical brand of football with their quarterback like no one else is doing in the game right now, and that's an issue. That's something that really sucks for Devin Singletary. And then you've also got Zach Moss, who had a higher opportunity share, meaning that, yes, his snap share was lower. Singletary was on the field more, but the touches and the opportunity for targets out of the backfield favored Zach Moss in terms of overall opportunity. So I'm going to stay away from that one. Zach Ertz was actually pretty underwhelming last week, scored a late touchdown to kind of save his value. I got screwed last week. I had a situation where I had Dawson, Knox, or Zach Ertz as my starting options, and I ended up starting, I just lost my train of thought here. Sorry, I had Dawson, Knox, or Zach Ertz. There we go. And I got screwed because I started Dawson Knox because Zach Ertz was questionable, and I didn't know if he'd suit up and play. And then Knox scores half a point. He gets one reception, and then Ertz sucks the whole game and then scores a basically garbage time touchdown. So I'll stay away from that one as well. I do think the Cardinals bounce back a bit this week. I kind of like Arizona plus 5.5 points against the Raiders. Not betting it, though, because I don't feel, uber confident enough to put my money on that one. So basically, that leaves us with Rex Burkhead here. You've got the Denver Broncos, and that's a matchup where I just expect a negative game script here. I talked about this a few minutes ago. You've got the Colts and the Texans last week that tied, and I just talked about taking division games with a different approach here in terms of how you evaluate them. The pace of play is a bit higher. The teams know each other's playbooks better. Yes, it is a new regime with Lovie Smith here, but my takeaway from that game is that I'm expecting a bounce back from the Broncos, and I'm expecting the Texans to regress back to their mean a little bit more. And what that means for me is that they're going to be playing from behind, and Rex Burkhead is the preferred third down back in this offense. So I expect a decent and respectable amount of targets, as well as obviously just out-snapping Damian Pierce again this week, something that I don't expect to remain a trend for the entirety of this season, but something that I do think is at least worth noting. And then he could, of course, get a goal line touch as well if that's how things play out here for this matchup. Moving on to the next question here. I did want to address Naji Harris here. Let's just look here. Okay, he is... I see a tweet out, and he's got a green check mark next to his name in terms of his availability. So, yeah, I would toss him out there in the lineup and just hope for the best. Again, it is an ugly and unfortunate situation, but I think it's something that you got to just kind of, like I said, take your medicine and just hope things work out and that the touches bounce his direction. James Dark says he personally doesn't believe that Jeff Wilson will be the guy. I could totally see this playing out over time here. You've got two other young options in that San Francisco backfield. And while I think that for week 2, Jeff Wilson is the option if you're going to start a 49ers running back that you should be concerning yourself with here. But of course, I don't think he is all that flattering of a player. I think he is more of a situational player for this team. And I think that over time, you could see two of those other running backs establish themselves as the potential starter in this offense. I've got some shares of Tyrion Davis-Price, so I would love to see that play out. But again, for week 2 here, I do think the safest option, if you're going to have to start one of them, would be to head the direction of Jeff Wilson. Evan says Michael Carter or Travis Etienne in his lineup this week for half PPR. I do like Michael Carter's outlook for this week, but I have to head the direction of Travis Etienne. I think he's the better player, and I really loved how the Jaguars used him in week 1. A lot of people were concerned about the overall touch distribution and breakdown in the rushing attempts in terms of James Robinson getting the 2 touchdowns for this team and being the guy that had the higher fantasy scoring totals. But if you dive deeper into the numbers, and one of my favorite stats from last week was the missing points assessment for fantasy last week, and that showed us that Travis Etienne was the top player in the NFL last week with missing fantasy points. Over 15 points were missing from his box score because of 2 errant throws and a drop pass that would have been a walk-in touchdown. There was, I believe it was in the 4th quarter, Etienne dropped a 5-yard swing route out of the backfield, would have went for a touchdown. And then I want to say it was in the 3rd quarter, Trevor Lawrence just airmailed one over his head on what was a wide-open speed out that he ran and would have been another 10, 11, 12-yard touchdown. So that sucks, and it looks really unsexy to have Travis Etienne in your lineups this week. There's a lot of pandemonium and, panicking, some commotion here. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to roll him out there in the lineup. I've got him as a fringe running back 2 for this week just because the production wasn't awesome this past game, but I am optimistic for a season-long outlook, and I love buying low on him while you have the chance. Obviously, it's game time, so probably not too many trades going down right now, but at least worth noting. I do like Michael Carter this week, though. That's something I don't want to, kind of just dismiss here. I think his outlook is very favorable with Joe Flacco in the lineup. I've said this. As long as Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback for the New York Football Jets, I like Michael Carter over Breece Hall for fantasy. We saw last season when Zach Wilson was the QB. Again, he had some injury issues. We had Mike White, who I'd freaking love me some Mike White, baby. So if they just roll him out there, that would make my day. But I don't think that's going to happen unless old man Joe has a back spasm or something. And of course, not ever wishing an injury upon a player, but what I would do to see Mike White play some NFL football. So Michael Carter, though, essentially what I don't want to dismiss here is that he is a very good PPR option for lineups this week. He's a guy that I expect Joe to throw a lot of footballs to out of the backfield. I talked about this a little bit earlier. You've got a situation with the Cleveland front seven that's just going to be running haywire after the passer. I expect even with Jacoby Brissett, the game script to bounce the direction of Cleveland and put New York in a bit of a hole here. They're going to be playing from behind and trying to play catch up in this contest. So that's going to lead me again ultimately to having Michael Carter as a player, as a check down option on the backfield, can have some really efficient numbers in that passing game. So I'll be keeping an eye on him, but starting Etienne over him this week. And Will Scala says he likes Ertz with Rondale Moore out this week. If he's your tight end 1, I don't mind starting him at all. I am just in that situation that was lined out. Who was the other option that we talked through a bit earlier? Ended up going the direction of the elsewhere just because of that week 1 outlook. But yes, I do like Zach Ertz as a top 10 tight end for this season. I think his opportunities should be a little bit higher. I was disappointed, though, to see the lacking opportunities in week 1, despite the fact that you had no D-Hop entering into that contest or Rondale Moore there for that game. So let's find my place here. Mark Ingram or Damian Pierce for this week. Evan is wondering here. That's a tough one for me. Like I talked about, I do have my concerns with Mark Ingram, but what you're getting is a team's lead back, and that's ultimately why I'm going to say go that direction here. Damian Pierce had just a 29% target share, or a snap share last week, which is just not cutting it. You're telling me that a running back who we expected, he on paper is their team starter. He is supposed to be the top back for this offense, and they were a 17-point leader against the Colts last week and still didn't defer to him in the run game for reasons that we don't know at this current point in time. Maybe they just feel he's not ready for that total workload and opportunity share of this offense, but it was Rex Burkhead leading the charge with 71% of the snaps heading his direction. So I have to go Mark Ingram here. No Alvin Kamara this week. You're getting the top back for that offense. I think he's still going to be very touchdown dependent, like I said earlier. Not super bullish on his ceiling this week, but I'm thinking and hoping his ceiling can hopefully be a little bit higher. Thomas is wondering, David Njoku or Taysom Hill this week without Alvin Kamara. I'll tell you, I've got a league where it's a super flex league. You start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 4 flexes. And I'm flexing Taysom Hill in that league this week. I basically didn't really have another choice due to injuries, but I like his ceiling. If they're going to legitimately run QB sweep and QB power with him every game, having a dude that you can just put in your flex spot or at your tight end position is kind of nice. So I need to dive into the details here. Let's pull up, I think I can just go over to Sleeper Fantasy without you guys seeing my screen here. I need to get like a Stream Deck or something so that I can share basically my window with you guys so you guys know what's going on. But let's take a peek at Njoku's numbers for this past game. He didn't make too much noise if I don't stand corrected here. So he had an 89% snap share. That's very, very impressive. Something you love to see, of course, but just 1 target, 1 reception, and 7 yards. See, the problem for me with David Njoku is kind of just that. It's the fact that with Jacoby Brissett as his quarterback, I don't really know how dependable he's going to be on a week-to-week basis. That makes him very touchdown dependent. Now, of course, Taysom Hill and most tight ends that aren't, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle when he's healthy, Darren Waller, everyone else besides that category is pretty TD dependent as well, but I will lean Taysom Hill in this matchup for the reason, of course, that you've got more dynamic ability from him. Someone did send, it looks like, a super chat Thank you very much, Melvin. I appreciate the heck out of you. That means a lot to me. I'll jump to your question quick, and then we'll jump up to the other stuff here. And for real this time, I probably should actually get going a bit faster here. But 14-man PPR pick. Man, we've got a really deep team here, so hopefully things work out for you. He's got to pick 2 for his flex. He's got Rashad Bateman, Travis Etienne, and Elijah Moore this week. Unfortunately, as much as I love him, the odd man out for me is Rashad Bateman. He did have a nice game last season against the Miami Dolphins, the matchup for the Ravens this week here, 6 receptions for 80 yards. But in that game, he was the team's wide receiver too. They still had Hollywood Brown. Andrews was on the field there, so he wasn't getting that tougher coverage from Xavier Howard. He was getting a bit of a lighter matchup against Byron Jones, who is a very highly paid corner, but I have my question marks about his ability to stick on guys like glue at this point in his career. My concern right now is target share and overall opportunities for him in this offense. I just think that you've got a situation where week 1, you got just 5 targets. Now that Jets secondary did very well aside from their safety core, but I want to see more work and more opportunities for Bateman before I continue to roll him out in my lineup as a weekly starting option. Again, Etienne, someone who had the most missing fantasy points of anyone in the NFL last week, and Elijah Moore, I like his outlook a lot for this week's game. So we got another super chat here. Thank you very much. I believe you see that, Lucius here. I appreciate the heck out of you. You guys do not have to super chat me. I'll answer your questions regardless, but I will bounce to you guys and prioritize those questions if that is the case. So he wants me to rank these running backs for today: Ezekiel Elliott, Chase Edmunds, and Damien Harris. My first ranked option, but someone I do not love, and I'll just preface that right off the bat, is Zeke here. The reason that he is the higher priority is simply because of opportunity. I think that he's going to be a guy this week that the team has to rely on a bit more than they did last week. I was really disappointed with Dallas's offensive approach. I was basically at a loss for words, as I am now, trying to think back of, how I'm trying to relay this to you guys, of how they broke down the running backs' looks in that backfield last week. They were bringing in Tony Pollard on 3rd down and long situations to pass block, not to run a route, not to get him out of the backfield in space and get him the football in his hands. They literally subbed one of the best pass blocking running backs in the entire National Football League out of the game just to put Tony Pollard out there as a decoy and get steam plowed by Devin White blitzing. So that to me was just absolutely head scratching, and I couldn't believe what the hell was going on in that game. And then you've also got the fact that both players had under a 5% target share, so they were non-factors in the receiving game. That is a problem for me. So that's my first issue with Dallas. But again, I think that if they have, half a brain cell, they have to run the football this week. The Bengals run stuff did a heck of a job last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers and Naji Harris, holding Naji to like barely 2 yards a carry. So it actually might have been less than that. I'd have to double check that. I can pull that up really quick here on Sleeper Fantasy. If you guys do not use Sleeper as a fantasy tool, you definitely need to do so. They've got really quick and easy stats. He averaged 2.3 yards per carry last week. So very, very underwhelming stuff there. Chase Edmunds is my next name up here. I think he's got to catch some passes out of the backfield this week for obviously that Miami offense and be somewhat of a factor for this week's game, just because of the fact I think Miami's going to get into a negative game script here, be playing from behind and need a little bit extra. And then finally, Damien Harris. I just don't trust the Pats offense right now. Pittsburgh's D looked very good last week. And of course, we're still trying to really iron out the distribution of touches for the Patriots backfield. You had Ty Montgomery having a really substantial opportunity share for that football team last week, but then you also had him going to the IR. Now you've got Pierre Strong in that dynamic, and then Ramondre Stevenson was actually the 3rd most used running back in that offense, as opposed to us expecting him to be number 1 or number 2. So that was really interesting to take a peek at. And then Lucius again, thank you very much for the super chat. You don't have to do that, but I appreciate the heck out of you. Has a defensive question here. He's got the Giants defense playing the Panthers this week, or the Colts defense playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. I appreciate the heck out of you, man. Again, he says he's just supporting the channel. Thank you very, very much. I'll take the Colts this week. I'm still very confident and bullish on their defensive front. I think they're really good at minimizing big plays here. And if we can see pressure on Trevor Lawrence, we saw last week that he was a bit jittery, he was a bit amped up, and he was willing to force the ball into tight windows. The reason I'm going to stay away from the Giants here this week is if you play in traditional fantasy defensive scoring where you lose points after a certain amount of yardage has been accumulated, I saw very disappointing things from their secondary last week. Of course, losing James Bradbury in the offseason is a big deal. They actually cut him, so self-inflicted wound there. But you saw in a run-first offense where Derrick Henry is the central and focal point for that team, you saw a Giants defense allow 3 Titans wide receivers. It was Traylon Burks, it was Kyle Phillips, and I forget the third name. It was Dontrell Hilliard. Had 3 guys go north of 55 yards receiving. So if you're getting players at that high of a frequency in a run-first offense that are doing those types of things, that's a bit concerning for me. Jumping back up to the top here, I've got to rifle through some of your guys' questions here because we are quickly running out of time, and I appreciate all of you guys for being here, so I want to answer your questions. Half PPR, we've got a question here, Rashad White or Kenneth Gainwell. I will bounce Kenneth Gainwell despite Leonard Fournette's questionable status for this week. I think he has more standalone value in that matchup as a pass catcher. We saw 4 different players for the Eagles score rushing touchdown last week. That includes Kenneth Gainwell. We've got Jim here. Is the Bengals defense a safe pick this week? Cincinnati's got the Dallas Cowboys. I think if you're going to stream a defense, that's a very solid option to do so. I just think Cooper Rush will struggle. And again, we saw Cincinnati play very stout, hold Naji Harris to 2.3 yards per carry last week. And they should be a very pissed off team here if we just take the emotional side of things coming into this week's matchup. We've got a question here. Ashton Doolin or Paris Campbell full PPR? I love this question, Rob. I hope you're still sticking around with us. It's been a while since you asked that one, but I really appreciate that one, especially because I wanted to talk about it. Give me some Ashton Doolin this week. Maybe we will look back in 4 hours from now and I look like a total idiot. But if you look at the distribution, despite the fact that Ashton Doolin played fewer snaps than Paris Campbell did last week, he had twice as many targets nearly. He had, 6 targets, 3 receptions, and actually some valuable red zone opportunities as opposed to Paris Campbell having 3 receptions, 4 total targets on the day. Ashton Doolin is going to have to play more in this game. Alec Pierce is out in addition to Michael Pittman. That bumps both of these 2 players up to the number 1 and 2 position groups. Paris Campbell could win vertically. He is a guy who, of course, has a higher ceiling. I will preface that, but I think the safer option, if you have to flex one of them, is going to be Ashton Doolin. I actually went back and forth. I had 3 options for my flex. I could have either started Romeo Doubs this week, Sterling Shepard, or Ashton Doolin. I had Michael Pittman on that team. I had a really loaded top 4 wide receiver core. I ended up bouncing the direction of Sterling Shepard in that scenario just because I feel really good about him as a player and love to see him kind of reassert himself last week. But I'll take Ashton Doolin as the higher floor play. I think he has a higher target share at the end of the day, and it's just going to depend on what those 2 players end up doing with the opportunities and looks they get this week. Would you fire up a injured DeAndre Swift over Waddle and ETN? Great question. Yes, I would. DeAndre Swift still going in the lineup this week. Excuse me, losing my voice again here. He is definitely going in the lineup, especially in PPR formats. I expect him to be highly used. Hit a 67% snap share last week. That's perfect territory. If he continues to get 2/3 of this team's rushing and receiving work out of the backfield, that is good enough for me. And of course, he is talented enough to make plays happen. He also said his ankle issue is nothing to be concerned about. Another question here from Lucius. Damien here. Oh, okay, I answered this one already. He says he's been subscribed for a while. He supported the heck out of the channel with a super chat a bit earlier ago, so I appreciate him. Christopher says Mclaurin or Allen Robinson for this week. Give me some Terry McLaurin. He was the 3rd most targeted player in the Washington offense week 1. When I say it like that, it sounds a little bit better than it actually was. That's a very bad thing. We saw Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson have a higher target share last week, but in a Detroit matchup this week that allowed A.J. Brown to go for 13 targets, 10 receptions, $155. I like Terry McLaurin's ability to win vertically in this matchup and do some nice things. Christian's got a question here. Allen Robinson or Allen Lazard, the battle of the Allens here. This is a really tight call for me. I think that the matchup on paper favors Allen Robinson. The talent favors Allen Robinson. But the risk, of course, is the fact that, A, Allen Lazard was questionable and did not play all of last week. He's expected to play tonight, but he plays a 7:20 Sunday Night Football game. So if you don't start Allen Robinson and you look back and something happens bad pregame, you're stuck with Lazard here. And Allen Robinson, of course, saw 2 BS targets a week ago against the Buffalo Bills. One of them was just an airmail pass over his head in the red zone at the end of the game as the clock expired, and one of those was like a 12-yard reception. So it's a risky scenario for me. I think that the opportunity here is that Allen Lazard would immediately be the clear and decisive wide receiver 1 for Green Bay's offense. And at the end of the day, knowing his health and status is available for this week, I would probably choose Allen Lazard. I think Green Bay bounces back this week. Now, slight bias for me. I am a Packer fan. I will preface that. I try to keep that out of my evaluation here. But in terms of my assessment of where those targets are going to go, I feel more comfortable telling you that Allen Lazard could see 6 or 7 targets in a Packers offense as their wide receiver receiver one. I feel a lot more confident in saying that than I do that Allen Robinson could see 5, 6, or even 7 targets in his offense just based off of what we saw last week. Now, A-Rob was getting open. I watched him shaking defenders in the secondary. I loved what I saw, but we got to he plays a dependent position. That's the important thing here. Trevor's got a question here. Curtis Samuel or Cortland Sutton this week? I'm heading Cortland Sutton's direction. I think that despite the fact that, again, we're still assessing the situation between is Jerry Judy or Cortland Sutton the wide receiver one for that team. Both saw 7 targets and 4 receptions last week. I think he does have great opportunity with his size to be a red zone weapon, so I'll go that direction. Andrew is actually riding with A-Rob, so he's going against the grain of what I said. Again, it's a coin flip for me. I think it could go really close either direction. I'm not super, high on one versus the other. It is a very close call. So, of course, you could ride with my advice or Andrew's there. Tony Perkins here, an SFS Gold member, someone who's been hanging out with the channel here for over a year, one of our biggest supporters here. Appreciate the heck out of him. Says, hey, do you recommend starting A.J. Dillon over Aaron Jones? Some of you guys listening might think I'm crazy, but yes, I do, Tony. I think that at this point in time, with the workload distribution we saw in week 1, A.J. Dillon's getting the more valuable touches in this offense. It's a similar situation to Kareem Hunt in the work that he does for the Cleveland Browns. It's a little bit different, though. We saw A.J. Dillon be outsnapped 51% to 61% in favor of Aaron Jones, but the touches went 15 to A.J. Dillon versus 8 to Aaron Jones. The key thing for me here, both of them are very, very capable on the goal line and in the receiving phase of things. They're both complete 3-down backs, but the way they were used in week 1, 3 red zone touches for A.J. Dillon, 2 of those puppies were on the goal line. Aaron Jones, 2 red zone touches, 0 on the goal line. So if you're telling me I'm taking the back who gets a better chance to score a 1-yard rushing touchdown that scores me 6 fantasy points, I'm taking that. We'll evaluate and assess here at the start of week 3. But for now, I am leaning the direction of A.J. Dillon. Sean West says he is rolling A-Rob over Bateman this week. I must have missed a question there. I did not see an Allen Robinson versus Bateman question. But in that situation, I do think I agree because, again, I do have my concerns about volume for Rashad Bateman after last week, despite the fact that he had a late touchdown that kind of saved my butt there. Terry McLaurin or Allen Robinson for your flex, Christopher. I will take Terry McLaurin. Again, love the matchup against the Lions here. We saw AJB go nuts versus them last week, and I loved, obviously, his talent is phenomenal. He's an excellent route runner athletically. He's a phenom. So head that direction with Terry McLaurin. Jeff Wilson or Christian Kirk for Bolt Gamer here, half PPR format. Give me some Christian Kirk. Love what I saw from him last week. 12 targets. That's immense receiving opportunity there. 6 receptions. Very, very efficient there with 117 yards on those 6 receptions. Doing some quick maths here for you guys. That's 19.5 yards per catch. So nearly 20 yards per catch. Super efficient stuff there. And clearly the number 1 wide receiver. He out-targeted the next best guy, which was Zay Jones, at 9 targets for that team. So again, 12 to Kirk. 9 to Zay Jones. I'll take Christian Kirk over Jeff Wilson solely on upside here for this week's games. Excuse me. Again, I apologize. I 1000% should have had a glass of water with me. We've lost our voice here at various points of today's stream. For those of you guys that are still sticking around today's video, I appreciate the heck out of you. Make sure to drop a like so others can find the stream here before we head on out. I'll be live for maybe about 20 more minutes here. We'll see. I got to set my lineups to make sure that I don't have any blunders. Of course, I haven't checked Fantasy Football Twitter in a few minutes here. I better make sure that no one's out. Of course, follow me on my different platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We've got a website, sizzlefantasy.com, with a bunch of information and advice on there. So check all that stuff out, you guys. I appreciate the heck out of you. Back to questions here. CZG_average asks, he's got 2 to start in the PPR. Must be a flex situation here, a wide receiver lineup advice question. He's got Darnell Mooney, he's got Allen Robinson, and he's got Curtis Samuel. So my job here, we're picking 2 of those names. First and foremost, these are all players that have some intrigue for this week, and it is a tough call. I actually have them all ranked very similarly on our website's week 2 positional rankings. I have to start off here. I'm going to start Curtis Samuel. I think that, ironically, he is the safest option of these 3. I cannot believe I'm saying that. You've got a guy that had 11 targets, 8 receptions, 1 went for a touchdown, and I loved the way the Commanders' offense used him last week. He was chipping edge rushers off the edge, off the line of scrimmage, and then turning around and catching screen passes. Now, he didn't really break any of those loose. He didn't get loose for a ton of yardage, but that usage is like Cooper Kupp type stuff. You're seeing a guy who is being used in the blocking game as a decoy, turning around, catching a pop pass, and getting out in space. So if you're telling me he's going to do that type of thing, in addition to just being a really good slot player, a guy who separates very well, his route tree is very complete, and he's pretty explosive after the catch as well, I'll take that in a matchup that's very favorable this week against the Detroit Lions. And then that other one's kind of a coin toss, kind of a personal preference call here. You can go Allen Robinson if you want. Darnell Mooney, it's hard to assess that game from last week. On paper, it seems like Mooney could get shut down against this Packers secondary, but the hard thing for me to fathom is that last week, as a Packer fan, with my own two eyes, I watched my defense line Preston Smith out wide in man coverage against Justin Jefferson. Do you have any idea how stupid that is? I was shouting at the TV, screaming. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So their coverage schematically last week was god-awful. Despite the fact that their front seven, their pass rush, it's all great on paper, it was incredibly frustrating to see that. So Mooney had 2 quiet games. He did have 1 respectable outing last season against Green Bay, scored a reception touchdown. I believe he had just 40 yards receiving, though. So you got to be cautious with your estimation here and your projection of what he can be this week. Ultimately, I think that he does have a nice ceiling and could have a good game here, but it's hard to know with that Chicago offense playing in such unique circumstances in that rain and weather at Soldier Field a week ago. So you might want to head Allen Robinson and just, again, take your medicine, cut your losses there, but it is kind of a shaky situation there. Next question here, we got a question. Do I still start Leonard Fournette this week? Yes, I am starting Fournette in this game. I think that we will see a stout Saints running defense. I think that last week, ultimately, they were a bit caught off guard with Marcus Mariota in the QB option game that they ran. He had 12 rushes for 72 yards. But I do really respect Fournette's goal line viability and pass catching usage as well. So even if that run game isn't nearly as efficient as it was last week against Dallas, he is still a workhorse running back. He is still commanding the top lead in touches in that offensive backfield. So that's the direction I'd swing there. Robert Tonyan or Taysom Hill? I'll take Robert Tonyan. I do love Taysom Hill for this week, but if the Packers offense has any sort of stability here, red zone opportunities are very much so on the table for Robert Tonyan, who, if you remember back to 2020, had one of the highest touchdown conversion rates of any player in the National Football League, especially for, obviously, fantasy-relevant players. And then you've got a situation as well where Taysom Hill, I love his usage. He's a very dynamic and skillful player. The situation we took him in earlier was Taysom versus David Njoku for this week. But Robert Tonyan is somebody that I just think actually has a necessity role in this Green Bay offense, meaning they need him to catch passes to actually have a sustainable red zone offense. So next question here, Damian Pierce, Travis Etienne, or Cam Akers for this week. I'm going to go Travis Etienne of the 3. Pierce had just a 29% snap share in the Texans offense week 1. That's a bit underwhelming, leaves you a bit unsatisfied. Travis Etienne had the most missing fantasy points of any player, over 15. Should have had 2 more reception touchdowns in that game. Just didn't end up converting those and turning that into magic there. And then Cam Akers, I don't trust him. 18% snap share last week. I think things will get better, but I'm not betting on him this week. Snazzy Puma, like the name there. Gabe Davis or Alan Lazard for this week. It's risky business with Gabe Davis's questionable status heading into this game, but I think he is the clear better option, assuming that he does play. So keep your eyes glued onto that health situation for both players like a hawk. If one isn't playing, you're going to have to start the other. But what really sucks, I talked about this earlier in the community Discord server. There should be an invite link to that in the description of today's video. So check that out if you want to join that and obviously have another way to chat with me basically all the way throughout the week here. The other situation, of course, I do want to mention, though, if you join the community Discord server, you have to wait to chat until I assign you a role. So if I'm still streaming, I'm not going to be able to do that right away. So hop in there, be patient with me. But the thing I talked about in that Discord server earlier today with some folks is that Gabe Davis is in kind of a shit situation where you're going to have a guy in Josh Allen as their quarterback who basically makes all the pass catchers rosterable in fantasy football. So Isaiah McKenzie's probably not going to be available as an emergency waiver wire ad if he's out. Maybe Jamison Crowder is, but he's still being rostered in a respectable amount of leagues. And then, of course, Stephon Diggs is already rostered. So you're going to have yourself a tough time finding a replacement option if Davis doesn't go. But for me, I'm starting with confidence and just hoping for the best here. Gabe Davis, actually, Tony says Gabe Davis is out. If that's the case, that is a major issue for us here. As I have him in a lot of lineups, so I'm going to have to get him out of there. It says he's still questionable, is what I'm seeing. Last tweets we're seeing on Gabe Davis are from 3 hours ago. Gabe Davis questionable for that matchup. It sounds like we'll know by Monday at 4 p.m., but again, that's not very encouraging to hear, of course. Yeah, wow. Okay, so 1 minute ago, actually, now we're getting tweets that says he will possibly not play Monday. Keep your eye on that situation. Of course, being on live stream here, I don't always, of course, have my eyes glued on Fantasy Football Twitter, so I'm not actively getting all of the information and updates as fast as you guys might be, just because we're answering questions and doing stuff here. But you're going to have to pay really close attention to that one because that is a big deal. I have him as an elite wide receiver, too, for this week if he's able to go. But if not, very problematic, and you might want to just start Allen Lazard there. DJ Moore or Michael Carter for the flex here for Harris. I am going to head the direction of DJ Moore. I'm going to, suck it up. I'm going to start him this week. I think that he should start to see the target share swing his direction in terms of favorability. He should be the guy that ends up getting more opportunities than Robbie Anderson. I'm not buying too much into Robbie's week 1 performance. He had 102 yards, 75 of it came on 1 catch. Now, yes, there is an argument to be made that you can't just scrape that catch off of the plate there. But despite the fact he had 8 targets, he turned those other 7 outside of that one play into 27 yards. So it's not a question for me. DJ Moore is the better wide receiver. He should be the alpha wide receiver 1 for this team. He had a really nice play getting the Panthers out of jail last week on the goal line, catching a 16-yard pass in a big spot. So I'm taking him there in that matchup. How would you start, or who would you start here from Evan, the Tiger, CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Judy? I misspelled Harry Judy. That's kind of funny. I would start CeeDee Lamb this week. I like both names. I do understand the skepticism with CeeDee Lamb. I think it's an excellent buy low opportunity. The reason I'm going CD here is the last time we saw Cooper Rush, he had 6 catches, $112 against the Minnesota Vikings on Halloween last season. I think that he is good enough to force the football to him, and CD is good enough to make plays on those opportunities. So the drop-off between Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush, while it is significant, it's not something that totally scares me off CD because I think that the game script is going to force them to throw the football a high volume of times, and I think you're going to still see him put up opportunities and production in that game. Andrew says, yes, Xavier only plays one side of the field. That is correct. However, again, it was a situation where you had Bateman working as the wide receiver 2 there. Yes, you are totally right. Xavier Howard does not shadow like we see some other players like a Marshawn Lattimore do for the Saints. But I probably should have swayed my analysis there to be a bit more clear. He was still the defense's second, possibly even third priority in the passing game, Mark Andrews being the first. Then you've got Marquis Brown, who was having a pretty solid season last year until he kind of fell off late down the season. He was putting up beautiful ceiling number games last year, had some big drop passes that could have obviously given him some much larger production in some games, hence the Detroit Lions game that they nearly lost. I think he dropped 2 touchdown passes in that game, but yes, you are right there. Felix says Christian Kirk or ETN at the flex. I would ask your scoring situation because I think that both of these players are very, very solid, of course. It's very, very close for me. I think Christian Kirk might be your safer bet here, but if you totally want to roll the dice and go for that elite upside, like I've said a few times throughout the video, ETN had the most missing fantasy points in week 1, so I like that direction. Ooh, we got a lot of questions flying in here. I better continue to roll along here. Oh man, my chat just updated and refreshed, and there is a whole lot more messages in here. Okay, so we have somewhat caught back up. I've got my place again. Full PPR or flex, Ramondre Stevenson, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Russell Gage, or Rashad Penny. I think my top option here is Elijah Moore. I do really like Russell Gage in this matchup, though, against the Saints, having no Julio Jones or Chris Godwin out there. Elijah Moore is my highest-ranked player for this week, though. Bateman or Melvin Gordon at your flex. I think Melvin's going to be your safer option, just getting more touches as a running back. We did see him get some goal line work last week, although him and Javonte both coughed up the football. I'll take Melvin, though, as a safer option. Bateman is the ballsier ceiling play. Andrew says he thinks Miami wins this week. I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Andrew. I will take the Ravens in this game. It would be a fun, exciting upset, though, to see Miami win that contest, of course. If Tyreek and Jalen Waddle get rumbling and rolling all over the field, you never know what can happen. Of course, the Ravens really struggled last season in this matchup, but it was in a hot, humid Miami game. It is the home opener, though, for the Ravens here this week. Chase Edmunds or Curtis Samuel. Again, 2 really solid PPR plays, 2 guys I expect to get a heavy amount of volume this week. I'll take Curtis Samuel in a really nice matchup against the Detroit secondary. DJ Moore or Michael Carter. I believe I might have just answered this question. I think he asked the question twice. Yes, he did ask the question twice. Please, Jerry Judy or Christian Kirk. Also, what is your thoughts now on how Kareem Hunt can do? I really like Kareem Hunt as a strong RB2 play for this week, and I think that the situation between Jerry Judy and Christian Kirk, I'd probably go Jerry Judy against Houston this week. I think all three of those options, though, are phenomenal. I appreciate your question there. Also, he says David Njoku or Dawson Knox. I will head the direction of Dawson Knox there for this game. We got another question here from Odd is the account name. Landry, Lazard, Stevenson, or Mooney in your PPR position. I will go Allen Lazard in that matchup. I'm not buying into the Jarvis Landry usage from last week. And of course, you know, he had a great game, over 100 yards, but 60 of it came off of 2 receptions in a dire situation, trying to move that football quickly down the field. We've also got the Dolphin. Okay, that's just a comment on the game. Darrell Henderson, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, 1 wide receiver open, 1 flex. Who do you sit? I think I'm going to sit Darrell Henderson if that's the situation you've got yourself with. Someone says I sound like Bengal. Thank you very much. Bengal is one heck of a YouTuber here, so that is quite the compliment. I really appreciate that, Duck, who looks to be very active in the comment section. I appreciate that. You guys, of course, are welcome to answer each other's questions as well. It makes it a bit harder on me because then I have to try and sift through your guys' responses when they're not questions, but totally welcome here. This is just a space to be an interactive fantasy channel. So I appreciate you guys. We've got more questions as promised. I'm answering all questions, so I will stay on a bit longer. I wanted to hop off about 11:30. I've got to get some pregame food going here. I got to get myself situated in my seat with my notes up. Obviously watching all these games like a hawk, but I'll get you guys all with your stuff here before we send on your way. Thoughts on Higgins? Is he a smash this week from Andrew? I appreciate your activity in the comment section today, Andrew. Yes, I think T. Higgins, I obviously, again, have not checked Twitter, so it's just hard for me to do that while I'm streaming. But assuming he's healthy and ready to go, he's not going to be on some sort of a pitch count. A concussion is kind of a in or out type thing. They're not going to put you out there if you've got, 25% concussed heading into a game. So if he's out there, Anthony Brown and Trayvon Diggs cannot cover those 2 Bengals wide receivers. Love those 2 in that matchup. Someone did send a super chat, it looks like, from Casa. He's got a flex situation, or she, whoever it is. We appreciate you guys dropping in the questions and super chats. Again, you do not have to do that, but I will jump to your question very quickly. Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper, or Allen Lazard for this week. My top-ranked option is Christian Kirk of the Jags. Loved his usage, 12 targets last week, 6 receptions, going north of 100 yards, and he did see some red zone targets as well. Very, very interesting stuff there. Hopping back up to where we left off here, we've got Edmunds or Curtis Samuel. I believe I headed the direction of Curtis Samuel there. Half PPR, Curtis Samuel or Jeff Wilson. Might just take me some Curtis Samuel there. Again, I think his volume last week, and again, his usage was spectacular for that Commanders offense. Health has really been his biggest problem. He was out the majority of last season, or I think he would have smashed again last year. But the safer option is probably Jeff Wilson. Could see a red zone touchdown. But of course, you've also got 2 other rookie running backs in that situation that could take some touches, that being Jordan Mason and Tyron Davis-Price. I apologize. I'm trying to talk faster than I actually can here to get you guys your questions answered here very quickly, because games kicking off are just 20 minutes or 28 minutes away. So with Javonte as my RB1, this is for Jack Myers. Should I start Breece Hall, Melvin Gordon, or Damian Pierce at RB2? That's a really good question. It seems kind of unflattering to start 2 Broncos running backs, but I'll be honest, I think that might be your best bet here. I think that both of those guys will be very active in this game. I think that the Broncos are stupid for using Gordon as much as they do, because Javonte Williams, I said this last week, literally it sounds like he's cracking a whip every time he touches the ball and gets tackled because of how hard he hits. But I'm not a big Breece Hall guy this week. I think if they get into a negative game script, he'll be very touchdown dependent. He was 45 to 60% outsnapped by Michael Carter, so that meaning Michael Carter had a 60% snap share. Breece Hall just had 45%, so things swung in that direction there. Edmunds, or I'm assuming this is either James Robinson or Allen Robinson, the flex. I will answer for both. I would probably head in full PPR Edmunds over both, if that makes sense. So full PPR, if that is the situation. If it is not, I might have the direction of James Robinson for this week. Start 2 in a full PPR, Zeke, ETN, Chase Edmonds, Miles Sanders, and Jamal Williams. Some solid options here. This is, again, his full PPR format. I think I would go Miles Sanders for sure in there. Not a super big pass-catching threat, but someone who I think can rush very efficiently again this week. And then in that second spot, I might just go Travis Etienne. I think in full PPR, he offers more value in the receiving game than you would see from Zeke Elliott. My close third would be Chase Edmonds, which is what it looks like Andrew preferred to go with here over Etienne. So I agree with that. Edmonds does make my top 3, but again, I would personally go Etienne and Miles Sanders for this week. Of course, you guys, yes, those of you saying thank you, I appreciate you guys being here. So it's a two-way street. I appreciate the heck out of all of you. It looks like we just got a real nice super chat here from DYL, half PPR, 3 wide receivers, a running back, and a flex. Damian Harris, Breece Hall, Devin Singletary, Elijah Moore, Darnell Mooney, Peoples-Jones, Sterling Shepard, or Paris Campbell. We've got a lot of options. So I need to pick 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, and 1 flex. Okay, so it looks like this is a situation where we're picking 5 players out of the group. I will start at wide receiver. I will go with, this is a deep league, man. You've got Elijah Moore. He's got to be in that lineup. I also got to go with Darnell Mooney. I think that, like I said earlier, it's a situation you don't love with Green Bay. On paper, that secondary is very strong, but their coverage schematically was awful last week. I'll take Mooney as my second wide receiver. Peoples-Jones had a lot of targets. He actually significantly out-targeted Amari Cooper last week. I think I will go Sterling Shepard, though, at that wide receiver 3 position. I am starting him in a different league. For your 1 running back, let me pull up my positional rankings here and just double-check what I have assessed for this week. I do have Damian Williams slightly below Breece Hall. I don't love that situation. I think it could get a bit ugly for Breece. I think he'll need a big run or a rushing touchdown. However, he is my highest ranked of those 3. And in your flex, I think I will go Paris Campbell this week, hoping he makes a big play against that Jacksonville secondary. So let me know if you've got any other questions, DYL. I'll be heading out here in about 10 minutes. I really got to make sure I get my lineup set up and stuff for you guys. But of course, like I said, we're not trying to leave any of your questions unanswered here. So let's enter into a segment. We're just going to call it Rapid Fire Q&A. I'm going to scale down the analysis a little bit, but I am going to answer those questions. So I got to try and find where I was last at here. Drake, London, or Kenyon Drake, or Montgomery. This being David Montgomery, I would go David Montgomery. Should we go Edmunds in the flex over Devontae Smith? Absolutely, you should. Chase or Devontae? In terms of fantasy, I'll take Jamar Chase this week. You probably should be starting both of them, though. Actually, rephrase that. You 1,000% should be starting both of them this week. Dawson Knox or Alberto? I'll take Dawson Knox. The Broncos have what looks like a tight end by committee. DeAndre Swift or Drake London in a half PPR flex? I will take Swift despite the banged-up status. Flex one of these options: Pittman, Kamara, Godwin. Chris Godwin's out. Van Jefferson, Dontrell Hilliard, or Gallup. Pittman's out. Come on, man. Football Fan 28. Make sure to check your lineup, dude. Kamara. Hang on. These players are all injured. Come on. Okay, that was a joke. But you could pick up McKenzie if still injured. Someone's saying for a question earlier, yes, this is true if he is unrostered, but I believe he is fairly rostered because he is a valuable player. Sutton, CD, Penny, Marquis Brown, start 3 standard league. I'll start Sutton, I will start Brown, and I will start CD. Penny's the odd man out there, just doesn't have as much upside in my opinion, or as high of a floor, to be frank, as well. Need 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, and a 12-team full PPR league. Patterson, Swift, Naji Harris, Michael Carter, Penny, Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, and a couple other names there. I will just cut to it here. 2 running backs. I got to go with Swift and CPAT, honestly, this week over Naji. 2 wide receivers. I'm going to head DJ Moore, and I might just go Jahan Dotson. Ayuk is pretty close there as well. Does he need a flex? And he does need 2 flex as well, so perfect. We'll go DJ Moore, Ayuk, Dotson, and then I might roll Michael Carter into that last flex spot. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, or DJ Chark for your flex. This week I will go Elijah Moore for AJ Music there. Of course, Tony, no problem. Thanks for asking your question. Darrell Henderson or Rashad Bateman at your flex in a full PPR for smoke. I will take Darrell Henderson this week. James Robinson or Jeff Wilson Jr. That is a very close one. Let me check my positional rankings here on the site just to make sure that I don't mislead you. I believe James Robinson is my higher ranked player for this week. Indeed, he is. I will take J-Rob here. It just could turn into a situation for Jeff Wilson Jr. where other running backs, Jordan Mason or TDP, Tyron Davis-Price, are getting touches. Flex, Kirk or Lazard. I'll take Christian Kirk. CeeDee Lamb or Jeff Wilson Jr. for this week. I will take CeeDee Lamb. Henderson or Penny, full PPR. I'll take Henderson. Choose 2, Landry, Claypool, Campbell, or Amari. I will take Paris Campbell. Oh, man, I cannot believe I might put Amari Cooper out of here, but I think that Landry might just get more looks. The Cleveland Browns are playing the Jets, and their secondary played really, really solid this past week, besides their safety play getting burned over the top. So I think, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think the game script and the secondary might make me swing Jarvis Landry there. Limited Swift or Gibson PPR. You guys are starting to scare. Am I not seeing something on Twitter here for DeAndre Swift? Like, is there actual reports of limited use and a pitch count this week, or is it just the questionable status that has you worried? If he's just questionable, like I said, I'm trying to stay as up to date as I can, you guys. But of course, being live here, I'm not like up, checking fantasy Twitter every 2 seconds. So, assuming Swift is just questionable and he'll be out there, I will take him. But if we're looking at significant discounted touches, I'll take Gibson. Bateman or Mooney, I'll take Mooney in half PPR. Landry or Claypool, I'll take Landry. You think Breece Hall is flexible also? I think it depends on your format if you're in a deeper league. For me, Breece Hall only 45% of snaps last week. He needs goal line carries, and Michael Carter is the more valuable back as long as Joe Flacco is the quarterback. I do not believe that to be the case for the season-long scope, though. I do think Breece Hall takes over and eventually is a top 12 play on a given week. Flex, DJ or Kareem Hunt. I'll take Kareem Hunt this week. Do I drop Dak or drop Warren? I would drop Warren. I would put Dak on your IR if you have that space. Gage or Drake London in Flex, full PPR. Very, very good question, Gavin. That's a tough call. Gage, I think, could see some significant work this week. Atlanta's got the Rams. I think I got to swing Drake London despite the fact that Gage could have a really nice game. Gage, Cooper, or Ayuk as your flex. I think I'll go Russell Gage in that situation. Amari Cooper or Sterling Shepard. I'm starting to get more bullish on Sterling Shepard. Again, like I just said, I've got Amari as a heavy bust radar player this week. It's basically a coin flip because obviously Amari Cooper is a far better player. Could go completely nuts on any given week, but that's a tough call. I could see Shepard getting more volume, and honestly, the quarterback situation is poor for both. I do have Amari as a higher ranked player for this week, but part of me just really wants to go against the grain and take Shepard there. Elijah Moore, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Rashad Bateman. Which two do you start? I'll take London and Elijah Moore in that situation there. What do you think? What's up? What do you think I should start? Brady or Wentz this week? I will still, TB12. All right, TB12 is on the bust list for this week in terms of just being a bust risk player. He could potentially get really thrown off this week. Carson Wentz does have the Lions. I would say if you're feeling ballsy, why not start Carson Wentz? I do have Tom Brady ranked higher. I'm not going to, straight up tell you to start Carson Wentz because it's a risky situation either way. This has been a brutal matchup for TB12, and personally I would start Tom Brady if it were my team, but he is a very potentially bust-worthy player here. Browns defense or Packers defense this week. I think I'll go the Browns against the Jets there. Gage, Cooper, or Ayuk for your flex. I think I might have just answered this, but I'll go Russell Gage. Packers sucked last week, so I don't know. Yep, that's very true. The Packers did suck last week. Hines or ETN this week. I'll take Travis Etienne in that matchup. Swift. Okay, we already answered that question. Travis Etienne or Damien Harris. I'll take Travis Etienne. That is for Matt. You have Gabe Davis. Should you drop Chris Olave for Isaiah McKenzie? I hate dropping Chris Olave. I love his upside for this season. But in this type of a situation, if you don't have a legitimate flex, an IR spot to put him on, you might have to do that. He says his other receiver is Drake London. Maybe you just start Drake London. It seems like there's a lot of concern out there about Gabe Davis. I'd have to check in on his status, of course, after we turn off the live video. I'll only be live for about 3 more minutes for you guys. I apologize. You guys, I underestimated how quickly the questions would fly in here, so I don't think we're nearly going to be able to answer all of these. Montgomery or CPAT. I'll go CPAT this week. Stevenson or Mark Ingram. I think I'll go Mark Ingram this week. Devontae Smith or Dortch in PPR. I think Dortch is the higher upside play there. Devontae Smith was significantly out-targeted by A.J. Brown last week. CPAT. Oh, that's an answer for somebody else's question. Drop Komet for Tunyon. I might personally do that. Mike Evans is healthy. Let's go. Start Kenyon Drake or Tony Pollard. I would probably start Tony Pollard. Sean Cook says, hello, I'm new here. What's up, Sean? Glad to have you at the channel here. Make sure to click that subscribe button. We appreciate having you. Curtis Samuel or Robbie Anderson. I'll take Curtis Samuel for this week. Half PPR flex spot, Gainwell or Jamal Williams. I think Gainwell has more standalone value, to be honest. Who are we going with? Full PPR, Allen Robinson or CeeDee Lamb? Give me some CeeDee Lamb. Jeff Wilson, Etienne, Kenyon Drake, Mooney, or Bateman. I appreciate having you here, Mike. Let's go. You got to start 3. Let's go Etienne. We'll go Mooney and Wilson or Bateman. I think Wilson's a bit safer. Bateman's more of an upside play. I'll let you make that decision there. Personally, I'd probably start Jeff Wilson if it were my team. What is the scoring format here? Full PPR. I mean, you're not getting a bunch of volume from Rashad Bateman, though. A.J. Dillon or Curtis Samuel. I'll go A.J. Dillon. Pick 2 wide receivers. A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, and Darnell Mooney. I will go, this is for David, I will go A.J. Brown, of course, and I will probably have to pair Waddle with him despite my concerns. Scott says he's also heard of a pitch count for DeAndre Swift, so go check Fantasy Twitter, you guys. Make sure that's accurate information. Again, I have not verified that for myself, but I also think Scott probably did his due diligence and researched that. So make sure everyone just has that information for themselves. Ramondre or Mark Ingram. I'm going Mark Ingram. I think McKenzie, yes, if people can add Isaiah McKenzie this week, you probably should do so before game time. Make an IR stash. Do something of the sorts. Should I trade CEH for Kyle Pitts? I need a tight end and an RB heavy. Yes, do that for sure. Sell high in CEH. He's doing great right now. He looks awesome in the receiving game, but goal line usage is still an issue for me. Thielen or Damian Harris this week in a full PPR league for Dennis. I'll take Adam Thielen. Olave or Tyler Boyd or Zeke. I'll go Olave and Zeke for your team there, Homer. Evans or T. Higgins, I'll go, man, Mike Evans has really struggled in matchups against Marshawn Lattimore, but I think they need him this week, so I'll go Mike Evans. He is potentially someone that could have a disappointing game, though. Marshawn Lattimore has really held him quiet. Do I draw? Okay, that's the same question that's been asked a few times about Tanyan and Kmet. You're torn between Pollard and Kenyon Drake since Kamara is out. I will go Tony Pollard. I think he's got a better ceiling there, and it's a committee for the Baltimore Ravens offense. They could have a nice game this week, though. Jamal Williams, Isaiah McKenzie, or Kenyon Drake. I would start Isaiah McKenzie. Flex 1, Rashad Bateman, Antonio Gibson, Michael Carter, or Tyler Boyd. I would probably flex Gibson this week. Just trying to make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Gibson's, yes, I would definitely take Gibson this week. Alberto or Kmet this week. I think you could go Kmet. Like I said, there was a bunch of players involved in that offense at the tight end position for the Broncos in week 1. You saw guys like, you know what, I don't even remember their names, so I'm not going to try to, but basically there was at least 3 or 4 tight ends getting passes out of the backfield and, you know, lining up at fullback spots and running through little bootleg jet motions and stuff like that. So I'm going with Cole Kmet. I feel like it's more of a committee at the tight end position than we realized here. Andrew says, good show. Thank you very much, man. I was contemplating going live here. Very glad I did so. I had a ton of fun with you guys. We did just get a super chat, so I'm going to jump to that really quick, and then I got to head on out of here. I apologize, but I got to get my situation set up here. Okay, we got a update from Twitter here on Elijah Mitchell, expected to be out for 8 weeks. And we've got Ty Davis Price suiting up in uniform for this game. If all goes as planned, Jeff Wilson, Jordan Mason, and Davis Price will get the touches. Shanahan will lean on the hot hand. We got 2 super chats. All right, we're going to be around here for a few more minutes, it looks like. Markel Adams is stuck between Jeff Wilson Jr. and Ramondre Stevenson in a full PPR league. Markel, I guess that information applies to you. I think that I would lean Jeff Wilson Jr. this week. I'm expecting him to be the lead back here. It's always a gamble betting on the San Francisco 49ers backfield, but that's something that I feel like in this game, the first week in a rainy situation, if he is that hot hand for you, he might just give you an RB2 top 24 performance. So for me, Stevenson against Pittsburgh, it's also a tough matchup. I'm not as confident about it. I would pump the brakes on him a little bit. I liked his preseason usage. I like and love his skill set, but I'm going to have to be a little bit more cautious about him this game. So I'll take the guy who is the theoretical starter, but again, I'm not saying Jeff Wilson is a total lock to dominate this week, because I do see where you can start kind of poking holes and flaws in that situation where a Jordan Mason could rip a 60-yard run, and then you're like, shit, what am I going to do now? So just keep your eye on that. Mike says, let's get this dub. Traylon Burks or Kenneth Walker rest of season? That's an interesting question. We've played 1 week of games here, and Kenneth Walker did not participate. I will, however, though, go on a limb and say I will take Kenneth Walker. He has league-winning running back potential to just blow the brakes off the doors here and take over that lead situation for Seattle. It's not a foolproof situation. You still have Geno Smith at quarterback. I believe they outdid themselves in week 1. It's not something I'm relying on or being super optimistic, and their offense as a whole is what I'm saying here. It's not something that I'm looking at as, he's going to totally break out and this is going to be an elite offense this season. But what I am expecting is Kenneth Walker to eventually, I feel like Rashad Penny is a ticking time bomb. It's like tick, 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 boom. And all of a sudden he's hurt, he's out, he's missing games. Once they unlock Kenneth Walker in this backfield, I think it's phenomenal. I do love Treylon Burks. I think that he has a chance to be comparable to 2019 rookie A.J. Brown, which is a very efficient and skilled playmaker for that offense. But the running back position has to be more valuable, has to get more love here because of that positional scarcity and just what he could represent for your team here. I see you guys are trickling on out of here. It's almost game time. It's been a nice long stream here. Enjoying this, but I'll answer a few more questions before we dip on out of here. I do have to get out of here by no later than 11:55, though. For my time, I'm in Central Time here. After last week, I'm debating Curtis Samuel over DJ Moore. It's a fair debate. I would start DJ Moore, though. You heard that Gabe Davis isn't looking good for tomorrow, so I think the safe play would be Edmunds, but I guess you could risk it. Yeah, if things are trending, and again, I'll say this 100th time here, I have not been on Fantasy Twitter as much as obviously I normally would be because we're live. If things are looking pretty bad here, you might want to just roll with the safer option and not put yourself in a situation where tomorrow you're getting screwed. Pick 2, Cooks, Gibson, and Waddle, full PPR, Browns defense, or Buccaneers defense. I will take, it's a tough call. I think I'll take Cleveland's defense this week. I do really like Tampa's defense, but I think that the Browns can make a mess of that Jets offense. And then you've got 2 players here, so I'll take Gibson for one. I think I'll take Brandon Cooks for the other. Breece Hall or Mark Ingram PPR. With Mark Ingram being the lead back there, I think it's both of them are going to be risky touchdown-dependent plays. If you got Stones, I might just go for Mark Ingram, though. Should I start Amari, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, or DJ Chark for my flex? I would start Elijah Moore. I have him as a must-start player this week. I think he has a pretty solid game. Aaron Rodgers or Carson Wentz for a full PPR league? I wouldn't fault you for starting Carson Wentz this week. I think his ceiling is definitely higher. He has 3 receivers that are probably better than any Packers wide receiver option at this point. I would say, again, his ceiling is definitely higher, and in that situation, I may start Carson Wentz there. Travis Etienne in the flex or Elijah Moore, weather in Jacksonville. Ooh, that is interesting. I was not aware of this. Let's check out weather for the Jaguars game. See exactly what we're looking at here. There's this website called stadiumforecast.com. What are we looking at? It is 80 degrees now. It is 80% humidity. I'm not really seeing any chances of rain, though. Again, I'm not watching the NFL pregame show right now. I suppose I probably could have had it pulled up and muted on the TV. Oh, rain, 39 to 44% chance. Okay, so that is actually really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up there. So the situation, to bounce back to it here, is Elijah Moore or Etienne for weather in Jacksonville. As a pass-catching back, maybe you swing Elijah Moore knowing that information. Now, A.J. Dillon or DJ Moore, I'd probably swing Dillon for this week. Devontae Smith, Tony, or Hall. I might go Breece in that situation. Tony got some very underwhelming snap count for this week. His snap count percentage was very underwhelming for this past week's games. I can pull that number up really quickly for you guys. And his usage overall was pretty disappointing. We're seeing a favoritism here. At 12% snap. That is very disappointing for a first-round pick a year ago. Andrew says, love you guys. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. Maybe you're talking about someone in the comments, but I appreciate you for being here, Andrew. DJ Moore or Michael Thomas? I would go Michael Thomas this week. Should I trade Kupp and Swift for Devontae and Barkley? Wait till after this week. We'll see what happens. Mega trades are something to stay away from at times. Full PPR, ETN, Curtis Samuel, or Elijah Moore. I will go Elijah Moore in that instance. Freiermuth or Taysom Hill. Probably go Pat Freiermuth this week. I do like Taysom Hill in some deeper formats if you need to stream somebody. Mike Thomas or Darrell Henderson. I'll start Mike Thomas this week. I expect his snap count percentage to rise. It was just 61% last week. He scored 2 tubs and 57 yards receiving. Deontay Johnson or Hollywood Brown, full PPR. I will take, man, that's an interesting matchup. It's a tough matchup for the two teams. Based off of my rankings, I have Deontay Johnson for this week as my wide receiver 23, and I have, who was the other name in that situation there? Hollywood Brown as my wide receiver 15. So I think Brown's ceiling is a bit higher than Deontay if you want to think about it that way. Deontay saw 12 targets last week. His floor should be better. Mike Thomas or Jalen Waddle, I'll go Mike Thomas. Patterson or Henderson, I'll go Patterson as a higher ceiling play. Choose 2, Elijah Moore, Alan Lazard, Zay Jones, Rex Burkhead, Mark Ingram. I'll take Elijah Moore. And I'll give it your call, Burkhead or Alan Lazard for next week. Patterson or Henderson, again, I'll go Patterson. CeeDee Lamb, James Robinson, or Montgomery at flex, I'll go CeeDee Lamb. Hines or Ingram for the flex, I'll go Ingram. I believe I answered your question, Matthew. I guess I don't blame you for asking a bunch of times just because we're getting low on time here. and you didn't want me to miss you. Who to play between Evans, Higgins, Brown, and Lazard. Those are good options. I have Evans as my highest ranked. Next up would be Higgins, then Brown, then Lazard. Mike Thomas is inactive. Michael Thomas is inactive for this game? Can't believe I didn't see anything about that on NFL Twitter. I'm not seeing that, so unless you're literally talking about Mike Thomas for the Bengals, but I can't believe that would be the case. Yeah, I believe Michael Thomas is active, so based off of the latest I've seen. MT or DJ Moore full PPR again. Interesting comment there, but I'm assuming Michael Thomas is active. Again, I haven't seen anything about that, and I'm assuming Adam Schefter or someone like that would have tweeted that, which I would have seen. So I'll go Michael Thomas there. ETN, or I'm assuming that's Michael Carter. I will go ETN this matchup despite the weather. I do like both options, though. Matthew, I did answer. I answered you like 3 times. I said Patterson over Henderson. Chark or Ingram in full PPR. I'll go... Chark had a nice, yeah, that's right. You did make me look, man. Screw you. Okay, and then Chark or Ingram full PPR. This is interesting, of course, because DJ Chark did have a big week last week. However, I'm not super confident on him, so I think Mark Ingram is the safer play. Last question here to Mateo, it looks like. Henderson, Patterson, or DJ Moore in full PPR. I will swing Cordero Patterson this week. I loved his usage last week. 22 rushes, a $120, and a touchdown. Looks dynamic as ever. Algier was an inactive last week, showing that, they were comfortable riding without him. So I'll head that direction. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, asked so many questions, and I appreciate the heck out of it. I love breaking down these situations with you. We stayed a bit longer than expected just because I really wanted to live up to expectations, answer all your questions, and not leave any of you guys behind waiting with any information you need for your lineup. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure to join that community Discord server in the description of today's episode. Follow me on my social media platforms. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like if you're new around here. All that great stuff. We got a bunch of outlets for you guys to check out, and I'll be active on Twitter and in the Discord throughout today's game. So check all that stuff out. I'll see you in a future video coming your way tomorrow morning. We got waiver wire episodes and lessons learned from week 2. Can't wait to dive into the NFL action here, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.